You know, we're living in what I like to call the era of the quantified self.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, think about it. We have apps that track our steps, rings that monitor our sleep cycles, and we spend hours on quizzes to categorize our personalities. Are you an INTJ? An Enneagram 4?
We're obsessed with data. It gives us a sense of control. If you can count it, you feel like you can, manage it.
Exactly. It's comforting. But I want to ask you and everyone listening to imagine something a bit different today. Imagine you're not just categorizing calories or tax codes.
A heavier lift, I suspect.
Much heavier. Imagine you're trying to categorize the absolute fundamental building blocks of the universe. And not just the atoms out there, but the you in here, the very fabric of your soul.
That is a big project.
It is. And that's exactly where we're going today. We're looking at a stack of research on sāṃkhya philosophy.
Or sāṅkhya, if you want to be precise.
Right. This is arguably the oldest, most influential system of thought to ever come out of India. And when I say system, I don't mean a collection of vague aphorisms. I mean a rigorous, almost surgical attempt to create a periodic table for existence itself.
It's a great comparison. Sāṃkhya is essentially the grandfather of Indian philosophy. If you've ever done yoga, if you've ever even heard of Ayurveda, you've stepped into the world of Sāṃkhya, probably without knowing it.
How so?
It provides the theoretical metaphysical backbone for all of those practices. It's the physics underlying the exercise of yoga, for example.
And we're working from a really fascinating source document today titled Philosophical Inquiry Sāṃkhya Philosophy. It covers what they call the bhāratīya jñāna praṇālī.
The Indian knowledge system.
Exactly. What struck me immediately about this source is the tone. It isn't dry. It describes itself as a holistic inquiry by a humble seeker.
And the text has the Sanskrit for that, Vinayajilena Sadhakena Samagrajijasa.
Which is a mouthful, but it really sets the stage, doesn't it?
It does. It tells you this isn't just an academic exercise. A sadha is a practitioner, someone on a quest for truth, not just a professor looking for tenure.
That feels important.
It is. That tone matters because the source opens with a prayer, a prarthana, referencing Sivan or Shiva abiding within the thought. So right off the bat, we aren't just in a classroom. We're in a temple of the mind.
But here's the tension I found reading this, and I want to unpack this with you. It starts with a prayer, but the philosophy itself is, well, it's kind of brutal. It's called dualistic realism. And the big promise, the so what, of this entire deep dive is that this philosophy claims we are completely fundamentally wrong about who we are.
That's the hook. It challenges the modern, and honestly the very Western, assumption that I am my mind.
Right. I think, therefore I am.
Sāṃkhya just says, no, your mind. That's just a piece of machinery. A very subtle, very complex machine, but a machine nonetheless. That's not you.
That's the cliffhanger we're driving toward. The idea that our thoughts are actually made of matter. But to understand how on earth they get there, we have to start with the name Sāṃkhya. I looked it up in our notes, and frankly, I got confused.
I'm not surprised.
I saw a number, but I also saw reasoning. Which is it?
It's a foundational controversy, and it's a controversy that tells you a lot about what this system is trying to do. We call this the Sakhyapadasya Vyutpatipuha, the struggle to understand the etymology.
Okay, so let's break down the two main camps here.
Sure. View A is the literal one. Sāṃkhya comes from sāṅkhya, which means number, enumeration, counting.
Okay.
If you take this view, this is a philosophy of enumeration. It believes that liberation comes from correctly listing the 25 fundamental categories or tattvas of reality. If you can count them and know them, you win.
So salvation through spreadsheets.
In a way, yes. Salvation through inventory. It's this idea that ignorance is just a lack of precision. If you're confused about life, it's because you haven't labeled the parts of your experience correctly. You're mixing up the columns on your cosmic spreadsheet.
But then there's view B, which feels a little more philosophical, I guess.
Right. This is where scholars like Dr. S. Radhakrishnan come in. They argue that Sāṃkhya isn't just about counting 1, 2, 3. It implies right knowledge or discrimination. It's the exercise of judgment, of reasoning. It's philosophical consideration, not just numerical reckoning.
So it's not just counting the books on the shelf, it's reading them and understanding how the library is organized.
Exactly. It's a declarative philosophy, or sāṅkhya darśana. It declares this is spirit, that is matter, they are different. And that act of telling them apart, that discrimination, is the whole engine of the system. The idea is you have to reason your way out of suffering.
Before we get into the gears of that engine, I want to give the listener a sense of the scale here. The timeline in our notes is fast.
It's a myth.
I mean, we are jumping thousands of years. It's easy to think of ancient philosophy as one lump sum, but this evolved over a massive period.
It's a sweeping history. We're looking at the Itahasalakana Kalakrama, which is the historiographical chronology, and our source does a great job breaking it down into phases.
It mentions a phase 1, going back to the Vedic period, around 1500 BCE. That's before Rome. That's before the Parthenon in Athens.
Right. This is the roots phase. Sāṃkhya wasn't a textbook yet. It was just this bubbling intellectual inquiry happening in the forests of ancient India. People were asking, what is the permanent thing behind all this change? The seasons change, my body changes, but something feels constant. What is that?
So it starts with a question.
Always. Then we hit around 800 BCE, which the source calls ajñāna, proto-sāṃkhya.
What happens then?
That's where the ideas start to gel. You start seeing these lists of categories, these tattvas appearing in other texts like the Upanishads. But it's still very fluid, not yet a separate formal school.
And if you want to read the definitive manual, the Constitution of Sāṃkhya, you have to fast forward 1,000 years to around 400 CE.
The Sāṅkhya
by a man named Ishvara Krishna.
Yes, that is the touchstone. If you take a philosophy class on Sāṃkhya today at Oxford or Harvard or anywhere else, this is the text you read. It systematized everything. It took those loose, floating ideas from the ancient world and locked them into a rigorous, logical structure.
And the lineage just kept going. The notes mention a blend of yoga and Sāṃkhya in 850 CE, then commentaries all the way up to 1300 CE.
Which is really important. It shows this wasn't a dead artifact. It was a guru parapara, a living lineage passed from teacher to student.
Can you explain that term, guru parapara?
Of course. Guru means teacher, and parampara means succession or lineage. In Indian traditions, knowledge isn't just information you can grab off the internet. It's seen as an empowerment, a living transmission passed from a master to a disciple. The idea is that the text is just a skeleton. The guru breathes life into it, explains the nuances. This lineage preserved and evolved Sāṃkhya for 3,000 years.
And it did evolve. The source mentions that it started in the ancient epics, like the Mahabharata, as theistic Sāṃkhya.
Sāṃkhya?
Meaning there was a god involved. But the classical version we're mostly discussing today is famous for being,
well,
not interested in God.
It's a fascinating shift, isn't it? Classical Sāṃkhya, the version in the Sāṅkhya, is often called atheistic, or maybe more accurately, non-theistic.
What is the difference?
It basically says we don't need a creator god to explain how the machine of the universe works. The machine works by itself according to its own principles. It doesn't deny God, it just says God is irrelevant to the system of liberation.
Which brings us to the machine itself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that core idea. We mentioned dualistic realism. In this system, there are two and only two main characters in the drama of the universe.
Two ultimate, irreducible realities.
Let's meet the cast. In this corner, we have Purusa, and in the opposite corner, Prakriti.
The ultimate odd couple of philosophy.
Let's start with Purusa.
Yeah.
Our notes translate this as spirit or self, but I feel like those words carry a lot of Western baggage. If I say spirit, I think of a ghost or a soul that has a personality, memories, maybe a sense of humor. Is that Purusa?
No, absolutely not. And this is probably the hardest concept for us to grasp. Purusa has no personality. It has no name, no history, no memory, no agenda.
So what is it?
We have to look at the Purula Kandamit's characteristics. The list in the Karika is very specific. It says Purusa is a witness.
Salnivan.
It's neutral.
Majestia.
And it is a seer.
Drakavam.
Think of it this way. Imagine a flashlight in a pitch-black room. The flashlight illuminates whatever it points at: a chair, a table, a wall. But the light itself isn't the chair. It isn't the table. It's just light.
Okay.
Purusa is that light. It is pure, contentless consciousness. It's the awareness itself.
So it's the I that is aware that I'm speaking right now. Not the thoughts about the speaking, but the raw awareness of the speaking.
Precisely. But the list has a fourth attribute that seems really counterintuitive. Akartabhava, inactivity. It says Purusa does nothing.
It does nothing.
Absolutely nothing. It doesn't plan. It doesn't decide. It doesn't love or hate. It doesn't act. It just is. It witnesses the movie of life, but it never buys a ticket. It never writes the script, and it never acts in the scene. It is the silent, static background of all existence.
Okay, so we have a silent, inactive, conscious flashlight. That's purusa. Now, let's look at the other half of this unbound wedlock, prakriti.
Prakriti is the everything else. We translate it as nature or matter, but again, matter in English sounds like dead, inert rocks. Prakriti is alive with potential. It is the primordial, magical hat from which the entire universe, mental and physical, is pulled.
The prakriti lakansham, the characteristics of prakriti, describe it as unconscious, so it's blind.
It is blind, yes,
Yeah.
but it is incredibly active. It's the dancer. If purusa is the audience silently watching the show, prakriti is the stage, the actors, the script, the lighting, the music, the drama. Every star, every atom, every thought, every emotion you've ever felt, that is all prakriti in motion.
The source material uses a phrase to describe the relationship that I absolutely love. It calls it astitvavadi dvaitavadarupe, abhajyaviva.
That is a mouthful of Sanskrit.
It translates to unbound wedlock as ontological dualism. Unbound wedlock. That sounds like a romance novel title, but it's deep philosophy.
It's beautifully poetic, isn't it? They are wedded because in our experience, you never find them apart. You always have consciousness, purusa, and you always have something to be conscious of, prakriti. They're locked together.
But they are unbound.
Because they never truly mix. They're like oil and water in a jar. Shake them up as much as you want. They seem to blend into an emulsion, but chemically, they never touch. The whole goal of sāṃkhya philosophy is to realize that the oil is not the water, to see that separation.
The source also calls this the drada sambantar,
The seer-seen relationship.
which is pretty straightforward.
Right. Purusa sees, prakriti is seen, purusa is the enjoyer, prakriti is the enjoyed. It's a relationship of function. Prakriti dances for the purusa, for its sake.
There's a classic analogy for this partnership that I've heard before, the lame man and the blind man. Can you walk us through that one?
Yes, it's in the Karika. It's the classic illustration. Imagine a forest and a fire breaks out.
Okay.
You have a lame man who can see perfectly but cannot walk. That's purusa. He has vision, consciousness, but no ability to act. Then you have a blind man who is incredibly strong and can run but has no idea where he's going. That's prakriti. Active but unconscious.
So the lame man climbs on the blind man's shoulders.
Exactly. The blind man provides the movement, the action, the evolution, and the lame man provides the direction, the witnessing, the purpose. Together, they can escape the forest.
But, and this seems crucial, they are using each other.
Yes, this is key. It's a functional relationship, a partnership for a purpose, which is both experience and ultimately liberation. They aren't friends. They are partners in a cosmic project.
So how does the blind man prakriti actually start moving? If prakriti is just this dormant potential in the beginning, what triggers the Big Bang? What makes the universe start happening? This brings us to the mechanics of the system, doesn't it?
It does. It brings us to the gunas.
The gunas.
You cannot understand Indian philosophy without this concept. It's everywhere. The source says prakriti is trikmethama, composed of a triple nature.
I like to think of these as the three strands of a rope, or maybe the three primary colors that mix together to paint the entire universe.
That's a great analogy. Everything in the universe, from a rock to a thought to a galaxy, is just a different recipe of these three ingredients.
Let's break them down. First, we have tamas.
Tamas is heaviness, inertia, darkness. It's the force that resists change and creates stability. A rock has a lot of tamas because it just sits there. But this applies psychologically, too.
How so?
When you feel depressed, lethargic, ignorant, or just stuck on the couch on a Monday morning, that is the quality of tamas dominating your mind.
It's the gravity of the soul.
Perfectly put. Then we have rajas.
Rajas is the opposite. It's movement.
Yes, rajas is kinetic energy, fire, passion, ambition, anxiety. It's the wind blowing. It's the ambition that makes you work an 80-hour week. It is constant movement, change, and the pain that often comes with that change.
And the third one, the one that balances them.
Sattva.
Lightness.
Sattva is illumination, clarity, harmony, balance. It's the quality of a perfectly clear, still lake that reflects the sky without any distortion. When you have a sudden moment of insight, that aha moment, that is sattva. When you feel peaceful, compassionate, and balanced, that is sattva.
So in the beginning, before creation, these three are in a perfect deadlock balance.
Yes, the state is called samyavastha, or equilibrium. Imagine a cosmic tug-of-war with three teams pulling with exact equal strength. The rope doesn't move, the universe is dormant, prakriti is asleep.
So what breaks the silence? What pushes the first domino?
This is one of the most subtle and debated points in sāṃkhya. The source says it is the transcendental influence of Purusa that disturbs the equilibrium.
But Purusa does nothing.
I know, it's a paradox. Purusa does nothing, but just by being there, just by its presence, it acts like a magnet. It doesn't touch Prakriti, but its proximity agitates the gunas.
Like holding a magnet near a pile of iron filings without touching them, they still move.
Precisely. The mere presence of the seer compels the scene to perform, and once that balance is broken, chaos and creation begins. One guna overpowers the others, and the whole process of evolution starts to cascade.
And this isn't biological evolution like Darwin. This is cosmological evolution, the unfolding of reality itself.
Correct. It's called praṇālī, the science of the cosmos. And it follows a very specific hierarchical cascade. The source calls this the astikaya pratimana, the ontological model.
Now, this is where sāṃkhya gets really, really weird for a modern Western brain. When we talk about evolution, we think Darwin. We think single-celled organisms, then fish, then lizards, then monkeys, then us.
A bottom-up evolution. Matter gets more and more complex until somehow it develops a mind.
Right, but sāṃkhya completely flips the script. It says the universe evolves top-down.
It starts with the most subtle and evolves into the most gross.
Let's walk down this ladder, because this leads to that shocking conclusion we mentioned at the start. So the gunas are disturbed. The first thing that evolves out of primordial nature is buddhi.
Also called Mahat, the Great One. It's cosmic intellect.
Wait a minute. The first thing the universe creates is intellect. Before stars, before atoms, before anything physical.
Yes. In sāṃkhya, the blueprint comes before the brick. The capacity for determination, decision, and definition comes first. It's the most subtle, most sattvic product of Prakriti.
Okay, my mind is already a little bent, so we have cosmic intellect.
Yeah.
What comes next down the chain?
From buddhi evolves ahamkara.
Which literally means I maker. The ego, self-arrogation.
Right. It's the principle of individuation, the sense of I am separate from that. It's what takes the universal intellect of buddhi and creates a specific individual point of view, I think, I feel, I want.
And from the ego, we get a split, right? It's like a fork in the road.
Exactly. Depending on which guna is dominant in the ahamkara, it evolves in two different directions.
On one side, the more sattvic side, we get the manas, the mind, and the 10 senses.
Right, the 5 senses of perception and the 5 organs of action.
And on the other side, the more tamasic side, we get the subtle elements, the pangitan sound, touch, sight, taste, smell, which then combine to form the gross physical elements, space, air, fire, water, earth.
Do you see what just happened there in that cascade?
I think so. And I want to make sure everyone listening caught it because it's huge. We just listed intellect, buddhi, ego, ahamkara, and mind, manas, as things that evolved out of Prakriti.
Yes.
But, and we have to keep repeating this, we said Prakriti is unconscious matter.
You see the trap? The conclusion is inescapable.
It is. This means that in Sāṃkhya philosophy, my intellect, my ego, and my mind are material.
That is exactly what it means. And this is the hardest pill for most of us to swallow. We are so conditioned to equate mind with consciousness, Descartes. I think, therefore I am. My thoughts are my consciousness, Sāṃkhya says. No. Absolutely not.
So what are they then? If my mind isn't my consciousness, what is it?
Sāṃkhya says your mind, manas, is just a very subtle machine. Its job is to process sensory data. Your ego is just a mechanism for identity. Your intellect is just a decision-making tool. They are all made of the guna sattva, rajas, and tamas. They are parts of the scene. They're objects, just like a table or a chair.
So my ego is just as material as a rock, just subtler dust.
Precisely. It's subtle matter. It changes, it grows, it decays, it has moods and qualities. True consciousness, Purusa, never changes. It is qualityless. It just watches. This is the great discrimination.
If you can observe your own anger, then you cannot be the anger. You are the watcher. The anger is just a storm in Prakriti.
That is the ultimate liberation. That is the entire point of the philosophy. If you can truly realize, I am not this anxious mind, I am not this bruised ego, I am the silent, unchanging witness, then you are free. That is the state of Kaivalya.
It effectively de-identifies you from your own internal drama.
Yes. It breaks the unbound wedlock. It implies that all the suffering we feel is simply a case of mistaken identity. We have confused the screen, Purusa, with the dramatic, often tragic, movie playing on it, Prakriti.
Okay, so that's the ontological model. But how do we even know any of this? How does Sāṃkhya justify its claims? This gets into their theory of knowledge, right? The jñāna pratimana.
Right, the epistemological model. It's a great question. They don't just ask you to believe it. They have a very rigorous system for what counts as valid knowledge.
And what are the valid ways of knowing things?
For classical Sāṃkhya, there are 3 pramadas, or means of valid knowledge. First is pratika, direct perception through the senses.
I see the tree, therefore the tree exists. Simple enough.
The second is anumana, or inference. You see smoke on the hill, so you infer there is a fire, even if you can't see the fire itself. It's logical deduction.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the third is shabda, which means word, but here it means reliable testimony. Specifically, the testimony of the Vedas and the sages who have perceived these truths directly.
So perception, inference, and trusting the experts. And they believe these 3 tools are enough to validate this whole cosmic map.
They do. They argue that the existence of prakriti and the gunas can be inferred from the effects we see in the world. And the existence of purusa, the witness, can be known through a process of elimination and ultimately through the testimony of enlightened beings.
I want to circle back to the source material for a moment. We talked about the timeline, but the source also lists the Mahatva Priya Grantha, the important treatises on the bookshelf of this tradition.
It's a formidable library. We already mentioned Ishvara Krishna's Sāṃkhya, which is the absolute cornerstone. But the source also highlights the Tattvasamasa Sutra and various critical commentaries by later scholars like Anuruddha Mahadeva and the very famous Vijñānapika.
Why are the commentaries so important?
Because they kept the philosophy alive. They debated it, defended it against other schools like Vedanta and Buddhism, and reinterpreted it for new eras. They show it was a living, breathing intellectual tradition.
And it mentions the Daivashastriya Sandarbha, the theological context.
Right. We touched on this. This is important because Sāṃkhya had a complicated relationship with God. The classical system doesn't need a creator god because Prakriti evolves on its own.
The machine runs by itself.
But the source notes the importance of Seshvadasai's theistic Sāṃkhya. This is the version that says, okay, Purusa and Prakriti are great, but maybe there is a supreme lord, an Ishvara, overseeing the whole dance.
Where do you see this version?
This is the version we see in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is basically Sāṃkhya psychology with a user's manual, and in epics like the Mahabharata, especially the Bhagavad Gita.
How does God fit into a system that seems to run on autopilot?
In the theistic version, God is often described as a special, unique Purusa, super Purusa, if you will, who was never trapped or confused by matter, who is eternally free, and who acts as a sort of cosmic guide or catalyst. It softens the hard, analytical edge of the philosophy and adds an element of grace and devotion.
This connects to another topic in our list, the Daivika Vijnanam, or divine cosmogony. Where do the traditional gods, Indra, Agni, Varuna, fit into this whole model?
That's a fascinating point. In the Sāṃkhya worldview, even the gods of the traditional pantheon are seen as part of the cosmic evolution. They are high-level beings, certainly with immense power and very long lifespans, but they're still within the realm of Prakriti. They have bodies and minds made of subtle matter. They are subject to the gunas. They are not eternal. They are posts, not persons, in the cosmic bureaucracy. Only Purusa is truly outside the system.
That is a radical recontextualization of religion.
Hugely.
I want to touch on the final goal here. We mentioned Kaivalya. The outline called this Mokshastra soteriology, the study of salvation or liberation.
Right, the end game.
In our culture, we usually think of connection as the ultimate spiritual goal, connecting with others, connecting with the universe, oneness. But Sāṃkhya seems to say the ultimate goal is actually disconnection.
It's a radical and often misunderstood thought. Sāṃkhya argues that our problem is that we are too connected, but in the wrong way. We are fused to our pain, glued to our temporary identities, mistakenly identified with the machinery of our minds.
And Kaivalya?
It literally translates to isolation or aloneness.
It sounds lonely.
It sounds lonely to the ego, to the ahamkara. The ego thrives on relationship and distinction. But to the spirit, to Purusa, it means solitude. It means being perfectly self-contained, self-illuminated. It means the witness finally realizes with unshakable certainty that has nothing to do with the messiness and drama of nature.
So if I achieve Kaivalya, do I just, poof, disappear from the world?
Not necessarily, just stop being confused. The source uses the analogy of a dancer. Prakriti is like a dancer who has been performing for the audience, Purusa. But once she realizes that Purusa has truly seen her, really understood her true nature as separate from itself, she has no more reason to dance. she gracefully retires.
The show ends.
The show ends for that specific Purusa. The unbound wedlock is amicably dissolved. The lame man gets off the blind man's shoulders and just sits in peace, perfectly content in his own nature as pure awareness.
So before we wrap up, how does this all stack up? I mean, a critical comparison, a sāṃkhya seems in order. How does this radical dualism compare to, say, major Western ideas?
Well, the most obvious comparison is with Descartes. Mind-body dualism.
I think, therefore I am.
Right. But they are profoundly different. For Descartes, the mind is the thinking conscious substance. For sāṃkhya, as we've said, the mind and the intellect are part of the body side of the equation. They are subtle matter. The true mind for sāṃkhya is the silent, non-thinking Purusa. It's a much more radical split.
So it actually divides reality differently.
Completely differently. And unlike many Western systems that require God to bridge the gap between mind and matter, classical sāṃkhya, as we said, doesn't. The interaction is just an unexplained fundamental fact of existence.
It really makes you question what freedom is. Is true freedom found in total engagement with the world or in total disengagement? That's the provocative thought I'm left with. If the witness realizes it has nothing to do with the dance of nature, does it just turn off the TV? Or does it finally enjoy the show for what it is, precisely because it knows it's just a show?
And that is the ultimate question, isn't it? Is kaivalya an escape, or is it just perfectly clear sight? In later interpretations, like in the Bhagavad Gita, which is heavily influenced by sāṃkhya, the idea evolves. You stay in the world, you act, you do your duty in prakriti, but you remain internally isolated, identified with Purusa.
You're in the world, but not of it. The lotus in the mud scenario.
Exactly that.
Well, this has been quite a journey. We started with a name that means both counting and reasoning.
A philosophy of both inventory and insight.
We traveled from the Vedic roots in 1500 BCE all the way to medieval commentaries, through living lineage, the Guru Parpara.
And we met the two stars of the show, the silent witness, Purusa, and the creative dancer, Prakriti.
We saw how their strange, unbound wedlock creates the entire universe.
We broke down the DNA of reality into the three gunastamas, rajas, and sattva, mass, energy, and light.
And we dropped the bombshell that your mind, your ego, even your intellect are actually made of matter, not spirit.
It's a lot to take in. It really turns your sense of self inside out.
It really does. It's a system that demands you look at yourself with absolute ruthless precision. It asks you to stop identifying with your thoughts and start identifying with the awareness behind the thoughts.
Which is a practice you can start right now. You don't need to be in an ashram in 500 BCE. You can just pause and ask yourself, I am aware of my frustration. Who is the one that is aware?
And just like that, you're practicing sāṃkhya.
You're on the path.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the ancient reckoning of reality. We hope this shortcut to sāṃkhya gave you a new lens to look at your own mind, and maybe a little healthy distance from your own ego.
Until next time.